But today, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Pragya Sharma. She's a senior consultant clinical psychologist with Samvedna Senior Care. She has a host of experience in working with adults facing various mental health issues and challenges, as well as people who have relationship difficulties. She has an MPhil from IBHAS and a PhD from AIMS. And she's worked with several international projects, has numerous publications to her credit, and has won several awards in the area of clinical psychology. So it's great to have her with us today. And as part of this series that we do regularly at Samvedna, I'm Dr. Jayashree Dasgupta, the co-founder and project director of Samvedna Senior Care. We discuss a host of issues around mental health. And what better topic than the one we're going to be speaking about today on the eve of Valentine's Day? We'll be talking today about relationship goals and how to grow old together. So, a very warm welcome to everyone who's joined us today. To begin with, Dr. Pragya, I want to just ask you, a lot of times people say do the elderly have different kind of needs in a relationship? Do these change over time?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well, Dr. Jayashree. Can you yourself? There's a lot of noise.
So before we begin, could I just request everyone to try and mute themselves and switch off the video? Thank you. So Dr. Pragya, to begin with, I just wanted to ask, do older adults have different relationship needs? What are their emotional needs?
Right. So, in a couple relationship in elderly, there are a lot of different needs. Yes, of course, emotional needs in terms of emotional intimacy, in terms of being having someone close, having someone to support them. Apart from, of course, their physical needs or comfort and intimacy and sexual need. And also because they are growing older, they need someone as a caregiver as well, to take on a role of a caregiver when they are going through illness, or if they have any other medical issues that needs to be taken care of. So having someone with them in that moment of need is something that applies more to elderly than others, because there are aging related issues. And also in terms of cognitive need, right? So there are also cognitive issues with the elderly. So their memory and their attention is suffering. So having someone helping them out in those areas of need is something that they would require in a partner.
So really someone to support them through somewhat different kind of challenges.
Right.
And what are some of the kind of challenges that you see people coming to you with when you interact with older adults?
So with older adults, in terms of couple issues, usually one of the things very important that plays a role in how their relationship changes is retirement. So when people retire, they have a lot of time at hand. They spend a lot more time with their partner than they used to earlier. So a lot of arguments ensue, which would not have done that previously because they were busy with work. Both of them were either working, or at least one partner was working. But when both of them are sharing the same space for 24 hours a day, it is imperative that some arguments will build up, some issues will crop up. So and also with age, they get more rigid about their beliefs and behaviors, and this is the time when they would not want to change. And if some change is expected from them, and then at that moment of time in their life, this would again lead to arguments and disagreements with the partner. Another issue might be from different expectations from each other. So this could be about physical needs. So one partner might want sexual intercourse more frequently than the other partner, or in terms of their social needs. So one partner might want to meet other people more often than the other partner does. And this discrepancy in expectations from each other and their own individual personalities is something that brings up a whole of issues.
I mean, I think you've highlighted a lot of things that people are really very shy to talk about. And so I think it's really great that you've brought that out, because people don't want to talk about intimacy needs, changing needs in emotional needs, as a relationship evolves, as you grow old together as a couple. Um, and you've also highlighted how retirement plays a major role in changing some of um, you know, the expectations, the kind of relationship that a couple has had for so many years. I think one of the things that we've seen from the beginning of the pandemic, we had a lot of people talking about how they were struggling with the fact that everyone was cooped up inside, and just space was becoming a real challenge. And this is something that you've highlighted a lot of older adults face routinely. Um, I mean, I just wanted to ask you, is this something that a lot of older adults come to you with? Do they experience a lot of guilt or shame when they talk about these kind of issues? What is the kind of emotional experience that older adults who come to you with these kind of problems face?
Right. So when we talk about physical intimacy needs, this is something that they do not come to therapy with. So they would come to therapy with saying that, since I retired, this has been an issue and we don't seem to get along on anything, and there are constant squabbles, and it's not worth living with this person anymore, even though they might have lived together for 30 or 40 years. But now these problems are beginning to emerge. And it is only after a couple of sessions that they actually open up and start talking about physical intimacy. And it's mostly, I mean, maybe it's to do with the stigma, but it's mostly the male partner who starts talking about the physical needs rather than the female partner, who still feels that there's a stigma, and I can't talk about these things openly. But eventually, after a lot of sessions, this is something that comes up. But otherwise, they would rather keep it under wraps and only talk about their disagreements and arguments, and then they would rather focus on them. But when I start probing and talking about other areas of their life, which also include physical intimacy, which is when they would start to open up and say that, yes, we have different expectations and we are not matching in that area. So that's when they come up with it.
Right. And I think just to mention that when we talk about physical intimacy, even the definition of that changes in relationships as you grow older. So, do you want to share any thoughts on that, Dr. Pragya?
Right, of course. So, one of the problems with, I'm sorry to say, Indian societies is that we do not appreciate a lot of expressions of love and intimacy, even if it might be just holding hands or hugging and kissing. But that is something that takes on a lot of importance as an elderly couple grows, and just holding hands, or hugging, or keeping a hand on someone's on your partner's shoulder is something that's very important, also because this is the time when touch is something that they don't get to experience a lot of, right? So they are very far away from their children who might be studying or living or working abroad, or they might not have other individuals in their life to share that touch with. So it might also take on a different level of intimacy, where it's more about just holding each other's hands, or hugging sometimes, or just sitting down together. Even that is something that holds value for them.
Right. So, I mean, when we talk about intimacy, um, I think it's important for everyone to understand that it evolves, and just basically showing an expression of caring or being there for another person, some physical contact, just holding hands or being with the other person. Sometimes not even talking. I think sharing a silent space together can also be very comforting. And I think these are things that are not highlighted enough. And it's sometimes it is quite awkward for people to even ask for these things from their partner. I um, I just want to mention to all of those who are listening in that if you have any questions or any queries for Dr. Pragya, please do type them in the chat box. You can this meeting is being recorded, so if you would like to put your questions anonymously, you can just send them to the host, and we will share your questions anonymously, or you can share them with everyone as you feel most comfortable. But I think this is a really important um, aspect of growing older, growing gracefully, older together, that we don't talk about often enough. Um, one of the questions that we had um, earlier from from some of the people who we've interacted with is, what is the effect of growing older? How does this impact the relationship?
So, in terms of positive changes, one of the things that happens when you're growing old in a relationship is that you feel that there's an emotional closeness and intimacy that has developed over time, right? So you're more in a comfortable space where you can be yourself. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to be this other person to get good feelings from your partner. You can just be yourself because it's been a long time of relationship, and that is when you also ignore some of the things that you might not agree with your partner on, right? So you might ignore them. So that is something that comes with growing old into a relationship, that you're looking at your relationship more positively, even though there might be some adverse situations involved. But at the same time, another change that happens is that you become more intolerant of these differences that you were tolerant about in the beginning. So you might have made your peace with it, you might have adjusted for a long time, but that is when you decide that, all right, I cannot deal with this any longer. This is taken up too much of my time and energy over the years, and I don't want to deal with it now, which is something that I've been seeing with mostly females who feel that they have adjusted all along, firstly with the in-laws, then with the partner, and then with the children, and there comes a time when they're like, I can't do this anymore. This is my breaking point, and even though I've done it for the last 30 years, I mean, it has taken its toll on me and I cannot deal with it now. So that depression sets in, or symptoms of depression set in, might not be clinically depression, but there is the time when they feel like, I cannot take it anymore. So with aging, with growing old together in a relationship, there are both positive and negative changes that come up.
So, and I think that's a really important thing that you've just mentioned, that there is often, and we see this, that often couples reach a point, a breaking point almost. It's like a tipping point when they say, we can't do this anymore. We've done this for years. We've not had anyone hear our side of the story. It could be either the male partner or the female partner. Um, and it's almost like a sense of wanting to give up at that point. What, at what point do you think a person should really seek, or what should a person do at this time? Because sometimes I think a lot of older adults feel uncomfortable about discussing these things their with their peer group or with family. Um, but what advice do you have for older adults who may feel that they're reaching that tipping point?
I think coming to therapy is a start, because they have someone who's not linked with them in their lives to talk to about, without any reservations, without any thoughts about, okay, what would happen if I tell this person, and how would they perceive it? How would they perceive me? So that non-judgmental attitude that they would get from a therapist, and also someone to listen to them, someone to hear them out, talk about their own problems. So more of a supportive relationship that therapy might provide for them in this supportive therapy framework. And also perhaps looking at how they have changed over the years, and what is it that they value most. so that we can, as therapists, help them be more assertive about some of the things that they are very passionate about, some of the things that they do not want to negotiate on. Apart from, of course, there might be some negotiables that they might still have to work through, but some of the things that they can finally have a communication with their partner on. So opening those channels of communication within the couple so that they are able to voice out their needs and desires. So I think coming to therapy would be a first step. But in case that's not an option for them, probably finding out a friend who can be supportive in that moment, who can be there with them in that feeling is probably a good idea.
So it's important, I think, to recognize for individuals whenever they're reaching that tipping point, and if they can identify somebody who they're comfortable to share this with, talk about this. Otherwise, reaching a professional for help is always is a great way to see how you can begin to help yourself. Because I mean, as you mentioned, that it's a non-judgmental relationship, and you don't have to come with those concerns about how others may view the fact that you're experiencing these kind of problems. So, I mean, I think that's a really important thing that you've highlighted for everyone, Dr. Pragya. Um, and another question that we have is, are there any gender differences in the way that particularly when it comes to elderly couple relationships and the kind of difficulties that you see people coming to you with?
Right. So even about from a research point of view, we have seen that affiliation is something that holds more importance for women, while control is something that does hold a lot more importance for the male counterpart. So these are some of the things that they approach relationships with. I mean, of course, I cannot generalize this to everyone, but this is something that's seen in a larger part of the population, where males would rather have more control over the household situation, about how things are happening, how their communication is, while females would rather, you know, want more affection and affiliation needs to be fulfilled through a relationship. This is also applicable to uh, older adults, because this is how they have lived their life through, and this is how they continue to uh, associate with. But gender difference is also associated a lot with role allocation and life events and role transitions that happen. So, for example, retirement might affect males more than it does females, even though females might be working as well, because females have also have other duties where they might be doing household work, they might be involved with the children more, but males have work as their primary area of focus, and when that is gone, they experience more disturbance in their life, in terms of what should I do now, and how do I work with my emotions in this extra time that I have, and what should I do with my time. So retirement affects males more than it does females. And it has also been seen that women are more distressed with marital problems, like because males might be able to have other areas of their life in which they keep themselves busy, but females might also focus more on marital life, and thus marital problems are more on their head and on their minds, that this is something that I need to work from. And in terms of caregiving, because that's an important thing that comes up with elderlies, is women are seen to have more caregiving duties. Women are seen to do more of a caregiver's role, and thus they also have a lot more of the caregiver burden on them.
Right. So again, I think one of the things that I'm hearing you really say is how important it is to plan together and kind of like set your goals as a couple together with various life changes. And you've spoken a lot about how retirement is this one very significant life event that can have a major impact on the goals and the kind of relationship that a couple has. Um, we have another question from one of our listeners about empty nest syndrome. Can you help us understand this a bit better?
Sure. So emptiness syndrome, if we look at it from a bird's perspective, what happens is that there's a bird who gives birth to and feeds the chicks until the chicks learn to fly, and then they fly away from the nest. Now, this is something that gets mirrored in human life, where children grow up, they get educated, they get married, or they leave for their further studies. So they move out of the house, and this is when parents have the experience the emptiness syndrome. So there was a chick in their nest, and now the chick has grown up and flown away, and now they don't know how to experience these feelings, how to make sense of this emptiness in their life, where a child has been for like 15, 17 years of their lives. So there are feelings of sadness, there is some amount of grief involved. There might also be some anxiety depending on where the child is now. If they're abroad and taking care of themselves, there might be some anxiety involved about how the child would, or the adult or the adolescent would now take care of themselves without having their parents alongside them. So that is basically how what emptiness syndrome is, that they feel this emptiness in their surroundings and not child with them anymore.
Right. So it's a sense of sudden emptiness when, particularly when children leave the home. Um, we have another question about how do past differences impact relationships in older age,
Past differences in opinion.
and differences in opinion, and I think differences, common differences that maybe a couple has kind of had through across the years.
Right. So as I said earlier, there could be one of the two things. So either you make your peace with it, you realize, okay, this person is different from me in these areas, and we can't like get to a middle point. So let's just not just maybe ignore it or not make it big an issue. Let's just live our individual lives around that single point. Or it might escalate into something that I've been living with this for 20 years, and you don't seem to get it. So it could be either of these ways, depending on how each of the partner functions around that thing, and what is it that they want to do with that particular difference of opinion.
Right. Um, and but as we have a question that many older couples live together out of no because they don't have any other choice. How can they be happier together despite their differences? I think there's one study which actually mentions that almost between about 60 to 70% of couples actually have unresolved differences, and that's a really really large proportion. So yes, it is a reality that couples do have differences, but how do we live with these kind of differences, and how can couples be happier together?
I think one of the things would be to look at uh, the things that they agree upon, rather than focusing always on the differences, right? So there might be things that they agree upon, things that might they might be equally invested in, or things that they might have in common. So taking the focus away from the differences helps at times. And maybe if there is any choice, if there is any way that they can kind of find a middle ground in their differences of opinion, that would of course work out. Maybe sometimes involving a third neutral person in whatever the difference of opinion is, to get another point of view, to try and understand the partner's perspective, because sometimes in the heated moment we are not open to listening to the partner's perspective. But when a third person kind of reflects it back to us, we are able to see where the partner is coming from. So this third person could either be a neutral person outside of the relationship. It could be a therapist. So just trying to work out with this difference of opinion, how they can work around it.
And I think what you're highlighting is really important, that communication and be open to talking about these differences and trying to really have an attitude or an opinion, approach to trying to figure this out is really important, rather than looking at this as a problem that's, you know, that there is no other way out of. I mean, we have a comment from one of our listeners that it's rare to see couples agreeing with each other. But we have another a question. Longevity is a reality, and we assume 60 as a retirement age, and many live up to 90 years. What issues may one face in this long life with each other? Are there any kind of studies done on this? Um, Dr. Pragya, what would you share your thoughts on this? So I just want to check, Dr. Pragya. Okay, I think we're facing a couple of technical issues, but maybe I could just respond to that whilst we're waiting for Dr. Pragya to join back. Yes, definitely. I think there are a lot of challenges that people do face, and as Dr. Pragya has been mentioning, that sometimes with that usually during the life course, whilst one is working, couples tend to find ways to either make their peace, adjust with certain differences, compromise, and carry on with other larger goals. And then, other life um, events come in, children grow up, leave the home. And then there's also a lot more time to, part one, people retire, and couples suddenly find themselves having a lot more time, space with each other. And it's a very different way that they have to experience living with each other from the previous many years that they have spent together, where a lot of times couples share a common goal of working towards raising the family, or financial goals and things like that. And yes, there are definitely challenges that then come up where, either one, maybe the couple begins to feel that that they have compromised for a long time, that they're really looking for something else, or, that they think about certain things that they may have missed out in the relationship across these years because the focus was really on something else. And these are really some of the kind of things that we hear older adults who come to us talk about and express. And a first step is really to acknowledge the fact that yes, a relationship goes through various kind of changes, and it's important to communicate about the kind of experiences and differences that you may as may as a partner be experiencing, very honestly and very openly with your partner. So again, as Dr. Pragya was mentioning, communication is really, really important. It's important to talk to somebody, talk to your partner about what you're experiencing. It's hard, for particularly we see this with a lot of older adults. It's hard for them to openly communicate with their partner sometimes because societally there is there are things that it's considered to be more taboo talking about. There are more concerns about perhaps becoming a burden or sharing these kind of concerns, which are somewhat, maybe viewed as somewhat silly, at this age where you're expected to have more experience, not, expected to really know it all and have a very perfect relationship after being together for so many years. But it is a fact that most older adults do go through some of these changes, and it's important to communicate with your partner, talk about these things, and if you feel you're reaching a tipping point where you're unable to resolve these kind of issues, reach out to a professional, because then that is a neutral expert party who can help you understand how to live many more decades together um, happier. And I think that's the really important, thing to focus on. So we have Dr. Pragya back, and maybe I could just ask her the next question that we have. Um, One of our listeners has mentioned that it happens that children start taking sides. How do we tackle that?
I think one of the things is to remain a consolidated unit in front of the children. Any disagreements that we have, we should never do that in front of the children. That has to be when both of you are alone as a couple, and then you can talk about it, because the children start taking sides when they see that there's a disagreement between the parents, and then they start aligning with one or the other. And also sometimes as individuals we make them triangulate, we make them take our sides with against our partner, and that is something that actually does nothing to bridge the difference, but enlarges, lengthens it even more, this gap between you and your partner. So we have to be a little mindful of not involving children in the arguments that we are having with our partner, and keeping it within the couple rather than taking it outside and letting the children get affected by it.
Right, and I think what you're highlighting is really really important about how children sometimes take sides, and sometimes couples also use this to their advantage. And I think this is, sometimes when people we see people coming to us in therapy after 30, 40 years of marriage, these problems or these difficulties um, have a very long past. There are patterns that haven't been very healthy for the relationship, but have been the way that a couple has been living together. And so I think it's important to try, and I think for many of the younger listeners who are also here, when we're talking about growing, creating goals to grow old together, that we realize that, if you're in your 50s and you're looking at growing old together in your 70s, that's a good time to start. But if you're in your 20s and you're looking, at or your 30s, and you're looking at growing old together in your 50s, even that's a good time to start. So it's never too late to start, but it's important to also realize that there may be, if you're experiencing certain challenges and difficulties, it's important to try to acknowledge that and try to do something about it. Yeah, thank you for highlighting that so well, Dr. Pragya. We have another question about at a particularly after 80 plus, when socially connected activities come to a standstill. Um, that's a time point at which a lot of older adults begin to face challenges. What advice do you have for them?
I think one of the things is to remember that you are a couple, no matter what your age. So when you're spending time together, you might want to be a little more creative about how is it that we can spend our time together, because there's been such a long history of being together that there might not be new topics to talk about every day. So you might need to think of activities that both of you enjoy and can be engaged in. So it might be, say, a movie night at home. Just switch on your TV and decide on a movie and watch that together. Or maybe sometimes you can go out for family outings, meet other uh, couples of your age or younger, or your children, grandchildren. And sometimes, just going out for date nights. I mean, it's you're not too old for date nights. You can always go to a restaurant, have some good food, and come back. But these are some of the things that would maintain that intimacy and that connection with your partner, and give you more time for communication, because sometimes within the walls of confines of the home, it becomes an environment that also has had a lot of conflicts. So So looking at it from a another point of view where you feel that you can connect with your partner is difficult. So sometimes going to a neutral place where you can make new memories and talk about other things, or just, maybe sometimes enjoying a board game with your partner. You're not too old for a board game, so just remembering that child inside of yourself and not giving up on the partnership and the relationship that you have with your partner. You can also sometimes maybe listen to an audiobook together, or read together, read to each other, or sometimes go on trips, maybe nearby, maybe traveling to another city. So just remembering to be together in a sense that is also involves a new activity to keep your attention on and to give you more scope for communication.
So some great tips there about things that activities that older adults can do together. I'm very curious to know what are some of the things that listeners do together. It's always great to get suggestions from everyone. It's about things that they enjoy doing together. So if there's an activity that you particularly enjoy doing with your spouse, something that might have taken you by surprise, I know a lot of older adults, some people said that we've never played board games before. It's too late to learn. You try it and you realize that it's actually great fun. If there's something that you've experienced and you've enjoyed it, do put it in the chat box. It'll be great to share that with everyone. So do put in what activities you enjoy doing with your family, with your spouse, that keep you feeling happy. Um, so we have one last question about what are the new trends in elderly couple relationships? What are some of the new things that you see?
So that a couple is very, even an elderly couple is very cognizant of their own personal space within the relationship. So earlier we might have seen a lot of enmeshed relationship where even females are sometimes restricted to the household, so they only have their partner for support, and they are not very well versed, maybe apart from the neighbors. They don't actually venture out of home or have other social connections. But now what we are seeing is that since both partners are maybe financially independent, and they have their own social circles and their own hobbies and life outside of their relationship or marriage, that they're very mindful of the personal space that they need, apart from the apart from the shared space that they hold with their partner. So sometimes in older elderly adults couples, they might also think that, okay, now we need separate bedrooms, now we need to sleep, because they have the issues, maybe there's snoring, maybe there's other physical issues involved, in which they would want a space to themselves, and they enjoy sleeping by themselves. Unless they are being physically intimate, they also enjoy that space that they have for them. And sometimes if an elderly couple is not married, but they are still in that dating stage, they might want to have hold on to their own space. So they might want to have their own flat or house, but they want to meet in common spaces and then go back to their own individual space. So this is something that I've been seeing, that acknowledgement of having some time to themselves for their own social connections or their own personal hobbies, apart from spending time with the partner.
So that's really interesting, and I think something really important and great advice, that it's important to kind of um, do things that you enjoy, even if it's independently, and as well as keep your social network um, as alive. Don't think that because you have certain restrictions, maybe don't cut yourself off from socializing, meeting new people. I think that's something that's really, really great advice. We know a lot of the older women that we interact with have satsang groups, very through religious practices and activities. It's a great way they get to widen their social network. I think that's one thing that I say a lot of the older women that I interact with say that's a really great way to make new friends. Um, and we've got some people said that watching movies together is great, going out for dinner, getting together with close friends. I think all of these are great ways to maintain your social network and really enjoy doing things together as a couple. Um, I mean, I think it's been wonderful to uh, have to listen into the very suggestions that you've given Dr. Pragya. You've really highlighted a number of things, right, from talking about some of the challenges that uh, older adults face and experience as they grow together. You've highlighted how various life events can impact a couple relationship. You've spoken about how retirement can really impact the kind of a relationship that a couple has. You've talked about the empty nest syndrome, how when children leave the home, that can also impact the couple relationship. You've also spoken about how, after many years of marriage, sometimes a couple may reach a certain point in their relationship where they feel they just can't continue on with the kind of compromises that they've been making for so long or the kind of differences they have. And you've really highlighted how important it is to be expressive, to be open about talking about these kind of challenges with your partner, with a trusted maybe family member or a friend, and definitely about how important it is to reach out to a mental health specialist for support. Because if it's great to if speaking with a friend or a family member can help you with this, but sometimes there is a lot of stigma about talking about these kind of issues. And at that time, discussing this as a couple with a therapist can be really, really helpful. And we've seen that kind of a change in older couples. I think you've also really highlighted how when we say older adults, it's really we're talking about really creating shared goals for a continued long life together. So as one of our listeners mentioned, that if you're retiring at 60, you're living till 90, that's 30 years to look forward to, together. So it's really important to think about these things and create those kind of shared goals. So thank you, Dr. Pragya, for really talking through all these various aspects. I mean, I think our listeners have got a host of wonderful tips on how to work together towards shared coupled goals as you age together. Any last thoughts from you, Dr. Pragya?
Right. So I would just like to say that don't take your relationships for granted. I mean, relationships like plants also need nurturance. So if you don't nurture them, if you don't work on them and expect them to keep working, I mean, when your relationship is old now, it needs a little bit of support. So just remember to support your relationships and give that the care that they deserve.
And I think that's a beautiful way to, a beautiful, really short tip to take home for everyone. I think it's one that we'll all remember for a long time, that you need to work on nurturing your relationship just like a plant as you grow older. So that's very beautifully put. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much for joining us,
So
Dr.
much for having me.
Pragya. And thank you to everyone who's listening in, and wishing everyone a very happy Valentine's Day. Wishing everyone very happy relationships with their families and with their other loved ones. So thank you so much.